straight on, these sides are parallel, which means that they are traveling at the, you know what parallel means. And the edges of these, everything square, the edges are parallel. But when we look at it from an angle, we start to see perspective. So for example, these squares here, so these lines here will be traveling off in that direction. Can you see these lines, these sides of this board, which were parallel, as soon as we look at them from an angle, they start to converge. And eventually that line and that line will meet at a point over there. And also when we look at these things coming from this direction, for example, this toaster is a rectangular, it's cuboid. But when we look at it from an angle, that too has perspective. And we'll find that it too has lines that shoot off and end up down there at a vanishing point. And those lines are on what we call the horizon line. So, excuse me, I'm not going to obsess about this because it's a little bit confusing, but just get those into your head and we will bear that in mind when we come to lay down some sketches. Right, okay, here we go. Grab your pencil. I'm going to work in a pencil today because, it's quite complex and it'll be nice just to be able to make a few adjustments should we wish to. But anyway, let's have a look. Look at those three lines there. Remember, we've got the vanishing point up there. We've got the horizon line along the top edge. I'm not going to I could put that vanishing point, that horizon line across there. But what I'm really looking at is this little corner coming down here. And then that line going off like that, and that line going off like that. That's our corner, isn't it? And once we've got that in, we can start to break down these kitchen items into really simple basic shapes. So what have we got? We've got a toaster. We've got a toaster which is pretty much a cube. So let's get that in. These lines of the toaster, these lines are just, we're getting them in as really, really basic shapes here. So we've got a rectangle, a brick shape there. We've got a cylinder here. So just draw them in as their basic shapes, as their geometric shapes, a cylinder. We've got another cylinder here, which is eventually going to become a bottle. Get a point on your pencil. Mine's a bit stubby and blunt, and that's all right for doing rough sketches like this, just to loosen up sketches. But if you get a nice point on your pencil, I'm making a bit of a mess here, but it doesn't matter. Do this over a bin. I'm doing it here so that you can see. Of course, you can use a pencil sharpener. Most civilized people do, but I don't currently have one handy on. Get a bit of a point on your pencil like that. And that means it opens up mark making vocabulary for you. You can do a very thin beautiful wavy line like that. You can change the grip on the pencil and you can do a fat gradient like that. You can start to vary the weight. So look, suddenly if you've got a decent point on your pencil, it opens up all kinds of mark making possibilities. Look at the variety that I've achieved just with a pencil. Anyway, I digress.
Martin?
Yes?
Sorry to interrupt. I lost you for a few minutes. What pencil are you using?
This happens to be a 4B.
Thank you very much.
That's quite all right. It's just a nice, soft black one, because we're going to start. And I was saying, you know, with a 4B, it opens up all kinds of possibilities. You can get some really nice dark blacks. You can get some very delicate points. It's like a paintbrush, really. If you get a nice point on it, you can do a lot with it. Anyway, let's get back to this drawing. Let's start. I've got my shapes down. Let's start refining them. Let's start having a look at, for example, my jar of pasta. Let's start and look at the outline. We've got an ellipse on the top. We've got a straight edge like that. There. And let's just let our eyes do the work. And let's watch what's happening. So we can see that that now is a lid. Let's have a look at this edge coming down here. It's got a little neck at the top. And the bottom, which is an ellipse, looks like that. I'm not getting upset. Look, that's a little bit lopsided, but you know what? It's a drawing. It doesn't matter. And I'm also going to put in a little bit of texture, just to let you know that this, obviously not going to draw every piece of pasta. I'm also just going to put in a little indication of where that highlight is as well. So now I've got enough visual information to start to paint. And that now no longer is a cylinder, we know it's a jar. I'm going to put form in it later on. Right. Now that we've got that, we can go behind that and get the toaster in. I know this toaster's already a kind of brick shape. It's got a curved edge like that, and it comes down there like that. So just enjoy the process of drawing. And look, we're just going round finding what makes this toaster a toaster. It's got little vents over here. And of course, it's got two big slots at the top for your toast. And now that brick shape is starting to look like a toaster. Okay.
Martin, I think you've muted yourself again.
Sorry, everybody. Ha! I don't know why I keep doing that or how I keep doing that. I'll try and... Please tell me again if I disappear. Where was I? Oh, yeah, I was just saying. This is a sketch club. We're not really taking too much time over a finished painting here. We're just using this to sharpen our observational skills and look at what we're drawing. That can come down there like that. That's got a nice bit of depth to it, so I'm going to make sure I make a feature of that. Let's go back here. I'm dancing around. I don't want to stay. I never stay in one place long enough to get bored. It's just nice just to walk around a painting. This bottle I've done. Really quirky, but it's rather nice. That is the kind of thing that makes, I'm not trying to promote slapdash observation, but that little quirky shoulder on this bottle. I kind of look at that and I smile and I think, crikey. Few little highlights on there. Few little highlights on there, just making a little visual clues. So I'm going to paint this and maybe leave little splashes of white here and there. And then we've got this pepper pot. There, and he's got a highlight on as well. And finally, we've got these two guys here. We've got a kind of onion-shaped jar with another onion-shaped jar on top. Okay, and again, little highlights shining on the glass. And that's enough for me to start painting with now, I think. So, grab your paints. Let's have a dabble. As usual, it's always a good idea to activate your paints with a spray of water. To liven things up. Let's make a start. Now, what I want to do today is just enjoy the color. I'm not going to stick religiously to these colors. The background's quite dull. The worktop's quite dull. You know, there's a lot of things in here that aren't very inspiring, but this is inspiring because when you start playing with color, things start to come to life. So I'm going to start off with this yellow and work outwards. But watch what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to start off with a very pale lemon. Ooh, grab yourself a little bit of tissue. A little bit of pale yellow, pale lemon. And just start to lay down a little bit of color. Now I'm going to introduce more variety. So I'm coming in there with that second yellow. And look at that. Isn't that lovely? It's already starting to take a little bit of form. Yes, that is kind of yellowy orange pasta, but don't just fill it in with one color. Make it exciting. There's browns in there as well. So let's come in with a bit of brown. See, because I've pre-wet these, I can go straight in there. Look, there's lovely rich color already in there. And then when I start to play, just drop it in, it comes to life. Now, interesting, when you look at the top of that pasta there, you can see on the top and the surface of that jar of pasta, it's quite dark. So I'm going to achieve that. I'm just going to drop a bit of blue in there. And that's done it. Okay. I'm going to try and achieve a little bit of metallic finish on this toaster. So it's reflecting the room, but it's also reflecting this board here, isn't it? The room, I imagine there's a blue sky outside the window. So let's try and get that. It's going to be just a hint. So I'm doing it, just picking up. I'm going to leave a lot of white as well. See there? That is my toaster. And the board, there's a reflecting brown board in there. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit of brown, I think the brown that I used there. And just maybe just drop something in there like that. But can you see how adding little bits of color and trying to make things happen is really going to introduce an element of interest into your painting? Right, I'm going to come back to this lid here. Let's get a bit of lid. Let's start to look at the way that the light hits that lid. It's shady around there, but it's lit there. So let's kind of make a point of that. Just try and make it look interesting. And it's kind of darker on top than it is on the sides. So look at this bottle of olive oil. What a lovely kind of unctuous green that is. I know I've got a nice mossy green here already. So I'm going to use that. If you don't, just try and play with the greens that you've got and try and make one. But look at that, that's beautiful. And if I want to darken that down, which I do, because, you know, there's more greens in here than just what I've got here. I want to make it really dark in little areas. So try and vary the intensity of it. There, look. Put some thicker stuff in. Make it do stuff. Because this is wet. This is all going to blend and play around and become really interesting. We'll put a bit of yellow in there. That really livens it up, doesn't it? Look, little slash of yellow and suddenly that's got dimension. You can see through this oil into the shadow at the back. It's quite dark. So I'm going to take that green and I'm going to darken it. What shall we say? You can darken it with anything opposite it on its colour wheel, but I wonder what happens if we just put a bit of purple in. Look at that. That's just given it something else, hasn't it? Good. Nice. And the glass itself, it needs a bit of something. It's not this neutral nothingness. Let's just give it a hint of something like that. And the same here. Okay. Let's get these breadboards sorted out. We've got a lovely pale lime green one at the front. I've got a lime green in my palette. If you haven't, it's going to be nearly all yellow with just a hint of blue in it. But that's nice. It's just catching the corner of that. So now what I like to do is go over a lot of my watercolor while it's still wet with a water soluble pencil, because it gives you a much blacker line than a pencil. You know, pencil lead is gray. These, which you can wet, you know, you can do all sorts. You can just wet the end in there and you can kind of draw with them. And look, it gives a much, much blacker black, which is rather lovely. That I can just see that that's got feet on it. We can put little feet on that. I can come down here and I can see, you know, down under here, there's a lot of shadow. We're going to come in there with some paint later on, but I can really accentuate that blackness with this water-soluble pencil. It's a lovely, lovely inky, these are lovely inky line, much, much blacker than a pencil, I would. So you see, if I want to get in here and darken up my little toaster slots, this is the tool to do it. Look at that. Suddenly they are much blacker and much deeper. Anyway, I'm going to come back to that later on. I can also still use my pencil on top of my watercolor. You know, there's lines and there's detailing in here, which, you know, maybe I don't want it to be black. I'd just rather it be a nice mid-gray. So I can just draw in with my pencil. And still make it interesting. But every now and then, I do want a nice black. Right, let's get this breadboard sorted out. Traditionally brown, but I'm tempted to start off with a little wipe of yellow like that. Later. And maybe draw some detail and some texture on, not with my dark pencil, with my pencil. I don't want it to be overpowering, but let's get some grain in there like this. Cheat a bit here. I've done a yellow breadboard there, but I've got a yellow plastic chopping board behind it. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to make that the purple one. A little purple. So. Right. What have we got here? My 2 jars with black lids. Just leaving a splash of white in there for a highlight. Oh, what have we got? What have we got? Start to put some of these nuts in there. See, these are just random shapes that just suggest something. Do you know what I mean? Let's just put a little hint of something in there. And below, just a little bit of something. Because after all, as I keep saying, it's just the variety of marks and colors that make things look interesting. Look what's happened to this olive oil here. Look how beautiful that has become by just allowing those colors to mingle and blend together. Okay, let's quickly just dash in this pepper pot, and then we're going to play around with the background. Obviously, I'm not going to make this solid black. I'm just suggesting. Second. There. Right, now where's my... really going to make this more of a silhouette. Now, the light falling on this scenario is coming from over here. And what I haven't done here is put in any shadow. So I'm going to do that now. And hopefully it's going to start to give this thing form. So if I just get in a nice neutral gray, maybe chuck a bit of blue in there just to make it interesting. I'm going to now start to create the illusion of depth by painting in the light that's striking everything and casting shadows. So this toaster's casting a shadow on that breadboard like that. It's a bit of a hard edge, so I just need to hit that with clean water. There's a shadow underneath the toaster itself. There's a shadow down the side of this toaster, which is being cast by the jar of pasta. So look at that. Suddenly it's all starting to look just a little bit more three-dimensional, isn't it? This bottle of olive oil is casting a shadow down there. This pepper pot's casting a shadow down there. The boards casting shadows, the breadboards throwing a shadow onto the wall behind it. And even these little jars here, they're just doing something like that. If I want to soften the edges of these shadows, I just take my brush and dry it off and just dampen off the edges, just to soften things down. And then I can come in with this brush, this water-soluble pencil, and re-establish a lot of the outlines that may have been lost, especially the darker ones. I mean, for example, here, look at that lid. This is interesting. I've just drawn in a darker line underneath that lid there, because if you look closely, there is a darker line on the bottom of that lid there. That line isn't really there. It's not really a line at all. It's just the interface between that tone and that tone. But underneath there, there's definitely a line. So I've put a line down there, and it creates the illusion of reality. I'm happy with that pepper pot. That's all right. I'm okay with that. This needs a little bit of a shadow down there. I'm using the pencil because that is perfect for the job. Now, what else can we do? There's a kind of, look, there's paneling at the back here. And also, there's a difference in tone between that wall, which is being hit by the light, and this one, which isn't. So let's just introduce something. So at the moment, these items are just floating in space. There's no background to them. So if we did this, then suddenly we can make them look as though they're in a corner. And also maybe just put a little bit of something in this dead zone here, just to make it look like a surface. And let's throw a little bit of tone in there. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to pre-wet this. I'm actually just painting it with my dirty water. And let's see what I can do with it, just to give it something. Because it's not pure white. These highlights are the pure white. That and that are very different values. So I'm just going to put a bit of something in, just so that it gives it a wall. These things are sitting against a wall. And they're also sitting on a worktop. So let's just do something here, see what happens. I'm touching some of these shadows, look, and the color's just running out, which is nice. So what colors don't I have in here? There's not a lot of red going on, but I don't want to do an overpowering color. I just want to give it the slightest suggestion of something. So I'm mixing red and green there, which cancel each other out, and that will just give me a neutral. So that has just given me a surface there. And again, I'm mixing reds and blues and greens and yellows. And obviously, you know, this combination of colors is going to give me a gray. I'm mixing my primaries, no matter how different the mixtures are. I'm just trying to get the neutral. And I'm coming down now, down this shaded wall. Problem is, of course, when you throw a lot of water into a sketchbook, if it's not watercolor paper, it struggles to deal with it. And you know, this is getting a little bit bobbly. The paper's cockling up a bit, but it doesn't matter. Now, there, I'm happy with that. And I'm just going to play on and pull out a few more little details with my watercolor, with this water-soluble pencil. And that's it. I'm going to play on for a little bit longer. Maybe. Introduce a bit of texture into this worktop. But other than that, I'm going to call that an interesting and enjoyable little study of a kitchen corner. Having said that, what's going on here? I think there's a kind of shady shadow a bit even above here. So I'm going to come in here with a bit of color. And just make this a little darker down there. You see, just where it's slightly darker, where there's less light getting into there, it just makes it, it just tucks these items up against it, which is nice. All right, everybody, I've kept you long enough now. Ooh, I need to do a bit more work around here. I need to maybe get a little bit more of a... Look at that, that little bit of shading on those lids. Really makes them turn, doesn't it? And you know, you can carry on going around your painting and your drawing, just making little observations as to what is going on in terms of light and dark, and putting them in your painting, and it'll carry on slowly evolving and coming into life. But I'm going to leave it there because I've kept it long enough. Let me do this. There we are, everybody. Sorry about the technical glitches early on. I don't know how I managed to mute myself. I must have done something with my elbow or something.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much.
It's been my pleasure. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was, yeah, it was an interesting subject, but I think it works well. Like you say, whatever you see, just sit down or take a snap of it on your phone or your camera or whatever you're using, and just use it as reference, because then when you start to look into stuff and break it down into the basic shapes and then start to develop it from there, it gets really interesting and it's really enjoyable. And it quietens the chattering mind as well, which we could all do a little bit more of. And on that note, I will say thank you for being here, everybody, and I will see you all next week.
Thanks ever so much.
Thanks, Martin.
All right, everybody, you take it easy.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. See you all. Bye-bye.